Hey guys, Professor Jay here at Organized Biology. Today we are going to be going through concentration gradients. First off, what the heck are they? And secondly, why are they so important when we're talking about the physiology of the human body? So I'm going to give you two examples. Hopefully that'll help you understand it a little better. So looking over here first, we're looking at a blood vessel. And this is a cell membrane, and say this is the inside of a muscle cell, for example. So your muscle cell, you've got your cell membrane, you're doing a lot of work, and you're making all this carbon dioxide, and it's accumulating and accumulating in your blood, in your muscle tissue, and you need to get it out because too much carbon dioxide is bad and toxic. So you need this carbon dioxide to get out. Well, amazingly, right now, there is a concentration gradient, if you haven't seen it already, because there's a high concentration of carbon dioxide inside of the cell and a very low concentration of carbon dioxide out of the cell. So naturally, by simple diffusion through the membrane, the carbon dioxide is going to move from inside through the cell membrane through the interstitial fluid right here into the blood vessel because it's going to move down its concentration gradient. So a concentration gradient really is there's this separation of concentration. There's a high and there's a low, and then there's sort of this tension, like it wants to go from high to low every single time, even though I guess it's high to low, but typically think like obviously high to low. But anyway, so inside the cell, there's a lot of carbon dioxide. Outside the cell, there's little, so it's going to move towards the blood vessel. Now, that's not all that's going to happen, right? Because you also see another solute, oxygen. There's a ton floating outside in this interstitial fluid between the muscle cell and the blood vessel. There's a high concentration of oxygen here, very low inside the cell. So naturally, by the concentration gradient, it's going to want to move into the cell. So now we've got this exchange of gases of oxygen and carbon dioxide where the oxygen is getting delivered to the muscle tissue that needs that oxygen to do respiration, to do the work. And we've got the carbon dioxide, that toxin, well, not necessarily toxin, but it's a waste product of cell respiration, making that energy moving into the blood vessel as well, which will eventually get expired by the lungs. So that's one example of a concentration gradient where solutes are moving in different directions. And what you noticed here is that they only move in accordance to their own molecule. What do I mean by that? Carbon dioxide only cares about where carbon dioxide is. So if there's like thousands of other solutes here, but no carbon dioxide, it wants to go from its high concentration to low. Same with oxygen. Oxygen only cares about other oxygen. So if there's a low amount of oxygen here, regardless of how much solute, how much water, how much other stuff is in here, it's only going to care about how much oxygen is there. So it's going to move from high oxygen concentration to an area of low oxygen concentration by itself. Keeping that in mind, let's go over to the other example, okay? This would be really common in a neuron, where we've got all of this sodium and potassium inside and out of the cell. But if you look, there's a higher concentration of sodium outside of the cell, right? Lower concentration in. Reversely, more potassium is inside, the K plus, than outside. So there is this tension where potassium wants to get out and sodium wants to get in because it'll move down its concentration gradient again. But the problem here is that these are charged ions. And if we know anything about charged ions in the cell membrane, is that they can't get through it. So this potassium wants to move from its high to low concentration, but it's going to get blocked. Reversely, this sodium wants to get in, and it's going to get blocked. So it's going to try to be pushing on that cell membrane, just like potassium's going that way. So there's this healthy tension. And what this makes is what's called an electrochemical gradient, where there's this separation of charge of ions on both sides of the cell. And the cool thing about the cell is that it can place protein channels to allow certain ions in and out depending on what the cell wants to do. And that's the core physiology of a neuron, which we'll get to when we talk about the nervous system. So once again, that's a concentration gradient. Things flow from high to low concentration based upon their own ionic or molecular concentration. I hope this was helpful. Be sure to like and subscribe and ask any questions in the comments.